Finally had a break in the weather here. It's like 25 degrees cooler than it's been running.
Same here, Chris. Not too far from you. And
Yeah,
yeah.
me too.
It's kind of nice.
Where are you, David? Are you in Oregon?
I'm in Oregon. Yeah, I think we're in the 70s today, but Saturday or Sunday, 102 again or something like that. We had a string of that heat that you guys probably got too.
Yeah.
I was just getting used to it.
I was just starting to enjoy it too. We've moved the town that we've moved into has got to be one of the most fun towns on Vancouver Island. And at the weekend there was about 1,000 people going down inner tubes down the river, just gliding down. It was the naturalness of the 10th GP. Just like total relaxation,
Hmm.
despite the numbers of people.
Yeah, I am in Switzerland, and today we had one of the hardest days ever. I mean, I live in a mountain valley, and it was 37.5 degrees in the shade, which is over 90 degrees. And yeah, my boss told me that that's actually the highest temperature that she remembers. So yeah, but tomorrow it's gonna be starting to cool off again.
I'm going to step away for just a second and then I'll be back.
You guys, in a minute when he comes back, do you want to try a little attunement called the Tiger?
Oh yeah, do it.
I was contemplating this discussion we had last week, and for some reason it brought up the tiger image. There's Jesse. Hi, Jesse.
I'm sitting here talking shit and my mic is off. Welcome, Mr. Jesse. Oh, get the fuck out of here. You ride that?
Yeah, this is my fun around town mobile.
Oh, fuck, that is sweet.
Yeah, thanks.
I could so pull off leather biker daddy, but
Hey, Jesse.
Hi guys, sorry I'm late.
we're just getting started. We decided since so many people couldn't be here, we're going to record this one and post it in the room. I kind of wish we recorded last week because especially towards the end, some of that conversation was really amazing. You missed the, is that a Harley, Jess?
It's a Honda Shadow, so it's a Harley style, but it's made by Honda. So
Oh, okay.
about a quarter the price, and it's been super reliable for me.
Perfect. Well, as we are following that format, does anyone feel like they have something really pressing and need some extra time, or we can just proceed with check-ins?
I'm intrigued by David's tiger attunement that you mentioned.
I'll be reading it. It's attributed to Dr. Austin in the work of eidetic imagery.
I have to switch glasses for just reading because the other ones are my driving and bifocals, so I have to keep going like this to see you guys clearly.
Okay. Well, you might want to close your eyes for just a moment. And before I read through the tiger, there will be a reference to the house towards the end. The house image is the house, could be the house you grew up in, the place that you feel at home. You know, with imagery, it's allowing your imagination to kind of take you. So maybe we should just start with a couple of deep breaths together. If you're in a place where you can relax and close your eyes. See the black velvety darkness on the right. See the golden sun on the left. See the two together in the center, in front. Black stripes and gold stripes swirl together in the center, in front. From the center of this swirl, a tiger leaps out and lands on the earth with a powerful roar. See the black night on the right. This is the velvety darkness of the mother, which rests with you at night. See the golden sun on the left. This is the golden sun of the Father that takes you into the world. When the two swirl together, out leaps the tiger that lands on the earth with a powerful roar. This is the blessed beast of your nature. See that you return to the house with the tiger. This is the tiger, which is your consciousness. Your consciousness is free and powerful. Just take that for a minute. I am complete.
It's nice. Thank you, David.
David.
If anybody's interested, next Thursday at 8:30 in the morning, I'm going to be doing the Be Like Your Place meditation again. It's an hour-long meditation. I find it as a powerful meditation, but if you're interested, just contact me and I'll send you a Zoom link.
If you want, put a notice in the group page with the time and the link.
Yeah, I'll do that. Thank you.
Can you tell us a little more? Did you say be like your place?
Yeah, it's a purification meditation that was taken out of. I'm trying to remember the name of the book. It's like Richard mentions it, Sand Talk, which was written by an Australian Aboriginal leader. And so this is me speaking that and then putting it to drum music behind that. And so it's a purification that links you to the land that you're on and your ancestors. And it's really nice.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah,
Are you gonna record it, Chris?
I have recorded it, so this is a replay of the record.
Oh,
oh, I see. Sneaky. He's gonna convince us all that he's leading it, and he's gonna be reading it from the past. It is. That's a great meditation, so I definitely recommend it. I won't be here, but yeah, it's good. I did it once before. Of course.
I did purchase that book and started reading it.
Book, excellent.
That's as far as I got with starting.
It's amazing if you can get through all of it. It's a whole different way of thinking.
Yeah, I just have to take time with the many things. I love that you're sharing that though, and the purification process.
I've been
Go
I've
ahead.
been through it probably 15 times myself, and I still get excited going through it.
It reminded me of the most recent inquiry into the dream arc, which I'm sure maybe some of you guys also get tempted to just sort of dive into one of your keys and read one of those animals. So I opened up the piranha, which is in the shadow of the attractor field of 22. My attractor field, and I was relating to this. The energy of it was to me was this sort of. I had this image of the piranhas taking off all the flesh, but the purification of the flesh, the purification of the sorrow, grief. Anyway, that's what your share reminded me of.
I'm having a hard time equating eating all the flesh with purification.
You want me to read it?
Not particularly. That sounds kind of gross.
It's well, it wasn't. I mean, the description wasn't of the piranhas eating the flesh. I just have this image of what piranhas do. Right? Piranhas are, like you say, they have a lot of. There's a lot of fear associated with what the piranhas could do if you jumped in there with them, right?
Right.
And maybe that's why it relates to dishonor. But the energy of it was such that it felt like a gentle invitation to, the allowing, what we call the allowing in all of the sort of Gene Keys contemplative process. When this really, really, deep shit comes up in the heart. Just recognizing that it's part of the process of letting go of what I would call attachment to delusion, attachment to the flesh, attachment to unreality. So yeah, I get a lot of gross images with my animal messages sometimes. I still have the actual physical image of a seal on the beach that had been decapitated with its guts hanging out
Ooh.
that I came upon when I was actually at a meditation retreat right on the Oregon coast. And after I took some time with it, I felt the definite, succinct message: you have to lose your head and spill your guts in the creative
Oh, wow.
process. Yeah, it's kind of
I love
a anyway. I I'll pause there since I've grossed you out, Tom. That's my saving grace is I can laugh at it, you know.
Hey, Yamas.
Hey, Emmett.
Hello, guys.
Oh,
We're talking about that letting go and left brain, and I put a post up in the group maybe 2, 3 weeks ago about Richard talking about letting go of his garden and letting go of his front lawn, and how the process of, the combination of masculine, organized, and everything being, in rows, and get all the weeds out of there, and to that gradual weighing over to the process of just letting it be natural. And if anyone hasn't really listened to that, it's really phenomenal. He describes it much better than I am doing at the moment, but the whole process of letting, because I'm a quad right, so I'm kind of there most of the time. Um, Actually, I forgot now who it was. Someone private messaged me after what I was sharing last week about a book. It's called Flourishing. I've just started to read it. And actually, I've been trying to shift when I feel myself kind of get into addictive looking for sex mode, or, trying to find somebody to, like, pause and replace it with something that's a little more healthy, like read a chapter, um, and see if I can ride out the wave of those desires or whatever it is that's coming up. And I haven't been doing it with a lot of success yet, but that's the intent. Um, what else is going on in life? That's really been kind of it. Looked, oh, I got crushed. I found this perfect house. There's 2 houses on this Indian named street right near the river that's in the city in Southfield. And it was perfect. Beautiful wood floors, new kitchen, new bathroom, 2 bedroom office. And they had added on to the house and built a walk-in closet into the master bedroom. It's like, it was tight. It was a beautiful house. $135,000, which was very affordable for me. And I bid 146 over what they were asking for, and it sold for 159.
mm,
It's like, fuck. And there was a house the same size that was a total piece of shit for the same price, but it was on a triple lot. And I'm looking at that as a possibility, if there's the possibility of me building a second home on the property while I live in it and fix it up. Financially in the future, that would work for me. But comparing the two, especially like they're a block away from each other for the same price, 135,000. This house, I would say, probably wasn't even worth 100,000.
mm.
Um, but the whole, as you know, Matthew, the looking for or allowing process of finding what I don't want is just mediocre. I want something that either is exquisite or that I can make exquisite. Pennsylvania, and hopefully at the potential of income producing, like Airbnb, have a roommate, or both.
Mm. Didn't you have the chance to bid for the second time for the first house you were talking about?
I can barely hear you, damn it.
Didn't you have the chance to bid for a second time?
No, it's above what I can afford, and it's already sold.
Okay, so the first house, but you usually when you bid, you usually get like a second chance, or you're not informed about that.
I'm only approved up to 150,000, so they bid way over what I can afford.
Mm.
So
And talking about the book, I think we discussed it like on the last session. That was as we were talking about the dragon. I'm glad
talking
you.
about the dragon.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think that was Howard who brought it up. The name of the book, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm glad you get it. You got it. Yeah.
This is called Flourish.
That's a different book to the one Howard.
That's a different one. Okay.
Yeah.
It looks
He
the cover
private
looks
messaged
different.
me this book,
Yeah.
and I just right after the meeting ordered it, and it was here the next day, and I was like, wow, that's quick.
Yeah.
The other one was Facing the Dragon.
Facing the Dragon. Yeah, that's what he was
I'm
talking about.
Robert Moore. Robert Moore.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I took a screenshot of the name Flourish Martin E.P. Seligman. I have it here, so I'm pretty sure we talked about it last session. But that's fine. That's great that you got it.
Tom, could I share just some breakthroughs that happened for me when we were looking for the home? And this is the same thing that had worked for Neo when he found his home. Was because we were looking through the market, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's like it's so easy to get overwhelmed by like, this is what I've been approved for, this is what houses are going for, and like seeing the market. And my wife and I just reached this point where we just started playing with it. And something Neo had said to me about when he got his house as well is that it's like literally using the focus of the mind in a way, because the mind can get caught up in all the stories in the media. And like when we were looking, it's like, oh, prices are going up, inflation's going up, and blah blah blah, and all this stuff. And it would be so easy to get sucked into that. And we were just like, and I had a conversation with Neo, and he said when he was looking for his home, he was looking for an apartment. And then I think a friend of his said, and why are you looking for an apartment? You want a house. And he's like, yeah, but I can't afford a house. And she's like, silly Billy, underpriced house. And so he's changed his intention to underpriced house. And so like his mind was open to the possibility, and it showed up. That's exactly what we got. We got an underpriced house. Like this house that we are in the market that it is in right now, is something way more than it should have been. And that was in a market where it's very competitive. So it's just like, okay, I'm open to that possibility. The other thing we said was hidden treasure. We're looking for a hidden treasure. And this one came for sale on a long weekend, which meant there was very few people who went through it because they were all busy off on holiday. And I'm not saying that it's like, oh, it's not like we're controlling anything other than just our own perception of what's possible, but we did have to open our mind a lot of ways in order to allow. And like on paper, my credit rating, for some reason, my credit rating was dropping, and my mortgage broker looked at all my stuff, and she didn't know why. She says, there's no rhyme or reason for why it's going down. And at first she was like, oh, I'm not going to be able to have you on the lease or on the deed. And then she came back, and I sat with the kind of the feelings around that. And about 10 minutes later, she called back. She says, I've just thought of a loophole that I hadn't thought of, and got, and so she got my name on the deed in the end, despite that story that I had about my credit rating dropping. And so it's so much to do with the team of people we had around us. Like we had a mortgage broker that wanted us to succeed. We had a great realtor, And we were willing to just kind of challenge some of those things that allowed us to be open to other possibilities. Because I know I've been there where you're just like, oh my gosh, is there like none of the places we'd looked at before, they were mediocre, like you said. And it's like my heart wasn't in it. And then we came to this place and I'm like, zing, it just something, it just opened up. So I'm holding that space for you too. But just the hidden underpriced treasure that is just waiting for you, and that you'll have the people, like everybody here wants you to have that. So you know you've got our support. And just imagining that there's other people coming or gathering around you who can do that same kind of wizardry. I didn't do it all on my own by any means. You know, if I'd approached it just by myself, I would have fallen into the, you know, oh my gosh, it'll never be possible. But I was open enough, I think, to attract a wizard of a mortgage broker. And so, you know, rooting for you. That's all. I just wanted to share that. And I wanted to share in the light of that attunement that you did at the beginning, David, and you kind of connected it to the tiger, which I think you connected it to last week's discussion, because you said, in light of last week's discussion. And I really, it's funny, as soon as it was like, oh, there's that sacred rage again. I still feel that in my belly. I don't know, you know, it's like a lot of energy moved last week, and it was a really good conversation. Opened up a lot for me this week, and I'm just really keen to hear, yeah, how others played with that this last week, and what, because you said, Tom, it meant a lot to you, that was really rich. And so I'm just wondering how that conversation we initiated last week opened things up for us in any way. I'd be really keen to hear that, because I feel like we opened up the discussion, and I feel like this is the kind of group that can take it to the next level. And we've got the magic 7 here today, so.
Well, just a quick add to that. Thank you. As soon as you said that, I thought about the 8th gene key, which is mediocrity and exquisiteness. It is the diamond in the rough. So that's my analogy for exactly what you just said. And I didn't really mentally contemplate last week's discussion, but I certainly have awoken each day with a lighterness, a brightness, a more easily to not be in a depression, but think of positive things that are, you know, the light rather than the darkness. So that's my experience of it.
This so I don't know if this goes on the same path that you're thinking, Matthew. But this last week I've been doing the Delta, and I'm in position 3, so it was peace through thought. And I've told everybody about the idea of killing my birds, right, in the back. And so that, okay, there's an excellent example of how we interrupt our peace through thought, and this comment that is filled with guilt and shame was my default. That's what I went to. And so as I hit this this week, I again was looking at that. What are the things in my mind that brings about this negativity? And so one, I was talking to my brother, and we were sitting out on the deck, and this was on Saturday. And he's telling me about a walk. He's 68, 5 years older than I am. And he started exercising, kind of really, not for the first time in his life, but it's the first time he's really taken it to heart and is really trying to eat healthy and walk every day. And he's got this 3-mile loop that he does. And he was telling me about, I take 1 bottle of water and I walk up to about the halfway point, and there's a telephone box there, and I stop there and I drink half that bottle of water. And because the next half is the hard part. That's the hard part coming up. And every day it's the hard part coming out. It's the part that's hard, right? And he's thinking it was so ingrained in what he was talking about that and he's been doing this for a year. Oh, that's the hard part coming up. I got to get my heart rate back down. I've got to get because the hard part's coming up. And that and thinking of that in us, what are the things we're telling us about these hard parts that we give ourselves these messages over and over, like, oh, I can't remember names, and all of this kind of gets in the middle of that piece, because when I say I can't remember names and I'm sitting there and I'm trying to capture somebody's name that I should remember at a party, and oh, is this Bill? Is this Richard? Is it what? And then I tend to shy back and go back into my introversion instead of an open heart. And right as I was talking to my brother and he was telling me that, 2 white doves flew over. Never seen 2 white doves in Spokane. Never seen a white dove in Spokane. So right there, 2 white doves, the bird for the 6th gene key, the peace, right? But then we had our meeting on Tuesday. That morning there was a fairly deep meditation that I was involved with, and this gets back to you, Tom, is this idea of, if we are creators, the thing that ignites that creation is the emotions, is the feeling tone of what we're trying to create. And that moves from feelings into physicality. And so holding the emotion of the home that you're looking to build, looking to have come into your life, holding that as deeply as possible. And to fully go into that without any of the negative, oh, but I couldn't, oh, but I wouldn't, oh, the market, all this stuff. It's really just, can you freely open to that emotion and hold that emotion for long enough for the creation to happen into the physical. Right?
That's what I would say when I met this place, when I found this place, is it wasn't, I never pictured it looking like a yellow house like this with multiple decks and things like that. But the feeling when I came here, it's like, this is the feeling that I've been holding in my heart for a space that so it was an immediate yes for it based on that feeling. And my wife, it's funny actually, that 8th gene key you mentioned there, Tom, because my wife and I were both walking around, and in my own mind, I was saying, man, this house is so unique. And then about 10 minutes later, she was still looking at it. She's, wow, this house is so unique. And I'm like, it's the uniqueness, right? It's that essence of that 8th gene key that you're talking about, that uniqueness.
Right.
It was the feeling state. So I completely resonate with what you're saying there, Chris.
And then if you relate that back to last week, could that be the riding of that dragon? Could that be you in the saddle riding the dragon? If the dragon is our ego, and we are now riding and steering and using our ego to our best possibilities, that would be that image of riding the dragon.
Yeah, with built-in flamethrowers.
Right.
And there was no saddle.
Yeah, when you're riding a dragon, there's no other people bidding on the house. Because you've got that built-in flamethrower.
Well, just look at Jesse's shirt.
I wondered why I kept looking at it. I could, yes, right. I want a dragon shirt.
Fabulous.
Well, sorry guys, I'm washing the dishes. I have the in-laws coming today, but yeah, how funny. I threw on the dragon shirt today. This is from my good friend Vajra, this amazing artist. And he's a beautiful painter, but he also is like a mythologist. And so this is the dragon that we face in between incarnations. And this is every soul standing before the truth of karma, you know, basically the dragon of knowledge and wisdom of eternity. And this is the infinite potential and like the world that we reintroduced. And so not only is it a really cool dragon, it's like this very archetypal form of the guardian of truth between incarnations and stuff. Yeah, I've been really enjoying this conversation and really enjoyed last week's conversation. That was I don't know, really penetrating into some deep spaces. I really appreciate our the way our group can do that sometimes. And yeah, I've been thinking a lot about how we act and interact with like different parts and pieces of ourselves, whether it's the masculine and feminine, the shadow of the masculine, the shadow of the feminine, or the divine feminine, the divine masculine, and just kind of how that operates. And yeah, I like this idea of riding the dragon in a certain way, but I also think like becoming the dragon is really a powerful metaphor as well, of like allowing for like a shapeshifter kind of energy, you know, to give it voice when it needs voice, rather than taming it. But there's so many archetypes of dragon, you know, whether it's in this Robert Moore book, it seems like it's a bit more of the grandiosity, and you know, Chris described it as the ego, and for me sometimes it's a bit more connected to the id or the subconscious, you know, this desire self that is very potent and powerful. So just love the multiplicity of this conversation that probably could go on forever. Honestly, there's no real answers in a quandary like this that makes it kind of delightful, because then no one can be right and no one can be wrong, and yet it's worth the inquiry. You know, it's worth engaging because it means something different to each person at each different moment in their life. So yeah, loving this talk of manifesting a home, and I just have an intuition that it's coming, like it's around the corner. I can't say why, but it feels like it's just around the corner, and that yeah, it may come as a surprise. I think this hidden treasure kind of idea, or like some strange invitation or something falling through the cracks, kind of has that energy of like, oh, weird, I didn't think about that, and then there it is, and it's just like, yeah, and it has a magnetic pull and attraction to it. With our house, we literally were like, it was one of the first houses we saw, and there was no furniture inside, so it didn't have the mystique or the draw. It seemed like out of place, or it seemed like a little boring or something. But it was the first house that we were like, you know, we could see ourselves there. And then we went on some travels, and a month later it was still on the market, and so we went back to see it, and it had dropped $27,000 that day. They had like put on a sale, and they were doing an open house. So we went and saw it that morning, and we were like, yeah, I think this is it. And so I just said to the universe, I was like, give me one more sign, like let us know if this is the right thing. And she pulls out the open house sign, and there's a fucking praying mantis on the fucking house sign, which like I couldn't have dialed up a better sign for me, of like literally a mantis on the sign. And so little winks and nods from the universe like that, I think are always really beautiful. And using that, like what Chris was saying, keeping the open heart, having some discipline over the mind to keep the mind's fears and shadows away. And you can always pick them up later. But around this right now, just, you know, having some like, I'm not going to have these mental thoughts that are like really negative. I'm just going to keep a little safe space around this, and really just having that magnetism of the heart. Yeah, I can just feel that energy coming from you, and it's and it approaching quickly and closely. So anyway, best of luck. Much love, Tom.
Well, thank you for that. And something clicked when I equated the diamond in the rough with it. So yeah.
And you did hear, he said it's just around the corner, so you might want to literally go and look for houses for sale around the corner. There might just be something there.
I'll have to look. Okay.
I feel I just want to pick up on I do enjoy this dragon conversation piece, so pardon me if I get a little repetitive, but it's, yeah, and it's interesting because we did bring up, and it did start with this conversation from Robert Moore's book, The Facing the Dragon, and I think Jesse kind of spoke to it. It's like, and I feel it's why, you know, because the dragons are big. I mean, look at that one on his chest. It's huge, right? It's like, that's a big dragon. And there's in Robert Moore's work, I feel he really does integrate the ego and the id within that, where it's not like, you know, the dragon is bad, the dragon is good, the dragon just is. And it's this really deep exploration with it that I love. And because like, even if we go back to what you shared there, Tom, with opening up with that 8th gene key, in a way, like the mediocrity, you know, we can see that there's the grandiose and there's the mediocre, that you can see there's a relationship in that. And it's like, so it's willing to be big enough to be this dragon. Like anybody I know who's seen dragons, literal dragons show up in their field, these things aren't big. They don't often see their whole body. They just see the head. It's like, it's that big that they're only seeing the head. I've heard a few people describing it's like they were doing a meditation or a journey, and suddenly there was a dragon. And they don't say the whole body was there. They just remember this head in there. And so I feel like this, it's this one of these things that I love, or that I'm kind of exploring with it, I guess, is that there is this, you know, one of the things that Jung would say is that those grandiose energies, you know, there's some psychological traditions that kind of think we just conquer our tradition, we conquer that grandiosity and move on. And Jung's perspective on it, and same with Moore and others, is that it's always there as like as something to pay attention to, but not to repress it, which it can be our tendency. And he does relate it to the idea of narcissism, which I think is a word that's got so much around it that, you know, I'm not going to open up that ball game as well here, but that nature of that, because, you know, where we played small as well, because if we're looking at a dragon that's big, like how many of us have felt that we played small in life? And there's just been something really, that book was really pivotal for me. And I'd explored the dragon from all sides before, like the male dragon and slaying the dragon, and then also riding the dragon. And there was just something in Moore's work that took it to another dimension for me in exploring it, and it freed something up. He actually has the same culture sphere as me. I have the 12th gene key as my culture sphere, and he does too. So maybe that's why I relate to it, because I can kind of relate to that sense of grandiosity in a way with the depth of the vanity of the 12th gene key, this idea that I'm this powerful individual, whereas the 12th gene key is reminding us in potential that we are, you know, we are a thread within this collective, and that the true source of power is all of us together in that way. And so, as you know, as I feel into that today, it's that the potential and the power within that, like as we ride these waves, because I can look back and where I lived my life out before, and I was at what I was perceiving, like I was in the shadow of my vanity. I was in that grandiosity of this individual I-ness of Matthew, and look what he's doing. He's doing these amazing things, and getting to hang out with people like Bruce Lipton and Greg Braden. I mean, isn't that great name dropping, right? And that's like that kind of piece for me. And then it all came crumbling down. And then I kind of shunned it. And that was one of the things I was noticing this week in myself, was that there's that 26 gene key of pride as well. And I think we kind of talked pride the other week. And within that pride is that need to look successful. And I remember when I was touring and speaking before, this is like over 10 years ago now. That's how long it took me to recover from myself. There was this sense of, I had such
You
a
find
wall.
the lunch meat?
I
It's
had this,
there's a
I
bunch
had
of
this,
cheese in the drawer,
is there?
and the
Okay,
lunch meat I think's on the bottom shelf. It's sliced chicken.
You want to mute,
good.
Tom?
That sounds great. I'll have some, please.
Oops, I didn't know I unmuted, but I just ordered that book and I got it in Kindle already.
Yeah, it's good. And and so I felt myself being in this position. This is why I love Gene Keys. I love Richard's example of it too, the normalness of who Richard is, because at that time I was very much in this kind of field of like the grandiose, but portraying something to the world and needing to look successful. I was in that field of that environs of things. And I even remember looking straight faced into a 9-year-old kid when he asked me a question. I can't remember what the question was, but I just remember walking away being like, you lied to a 9-year-old because of your pride. And I beat myself up a lot for that afterwards. And over the years, and this was kind of, I just had this, and it must be because we're in this 33rd gene key, this pulse, and just this memory flashed up of this. And just this, like, this sense of, well, there was guilt in there, I'm sure, but it was this, how I'd gone the other way, which was, like, I don't have a flashy website and things like that right now. It's almost like if, it was almost like I don't need to look successful, because looking successful was, that pressure I put on myself was dangerous. I caused myself a lot of pain by that, through that pride. So in a way, repressing that pride aspect in some ways, right? And so was sitting with the nature of that. And it's so funny because Kathleen Purvu, who actually shares the same birthday as me, moments after I had this contemplation, I was sitting there, I was like, this is the 33rd gene key, and it's asking me to look at the 26. And I opened Richard's 64 Ways book. It randomly opens up at chapter 26, the 26 gene key. And then Kathleen Purvu writes this thing. If you have a chance to watch it, read it. It's great. It's on the Gene Keys Global page. And he speaks to the nature, because they're mirrors, the 33 and the 26. They're a mirror in terms of the hexagram, the lines, and I haven't looked into that deeper. Jesse might be able to speak to that better. But anyway, it was like, oh my gosh, so I'm not the only one contemplating the relationship between 33 and 26 on this day. But it also connects me into this idea of this dragon within, that, that because it's like, if we didn't have that grandiosity, we couldn't believe we could change the world, right? We couldn't believe that we could be part of something that might change the world, like the Gene Keys or something like that. And so I've both acted on my grandiosity unconsciously, and I've played with that dragon unconsciously. And now it's like this, facing the dragon brings it much more into my conscious awareness as I'm seeing new opportunities opening up for me. with different things, and I can feel that, there's a part of me that's resistant to that, and almost like there's this fear of being seen, which is underneath the thread, underneath that 26 gene key. If you look in the dream arc, it's the fear of being seen. And I've really felt that, because it's like, I've done this before and I screwed up royally. And in my mind, it was because of my pride and my grandiosity. And yet here I found this way to work with it. And one of the things, like, it was so funny I went on this Robert Moore binge for a while, and one of the things he talks about is the power of ritual. And then we opened up the dream arc, which then dives deep into the nature of ritual and the importance of ritual. And Jesse's just mentioning the praying mantis, which is the portal totem, the portal creature associated with that space of ritual. Again, the 12th gene being my culture sphere. And so Robert Moore talks about the importance, in meeting the dragon, in meeting those energies, these big energies within ourselves, meeting them with prayer and with active imagination, which are all things that we meet in the dream arc as well, or in other traditions that we work with. I know dream arc isn't the only one where I've come through that and worked with that. And so I love this, not just in terms of the masculine feminine conversation when it comes to the dragon piece, where Robert Morris takes it beyond the masculine and the feminine into just simply the nature of the dragon, nature of the beast. And it just, seeing as Howard brought that in last week, I felt like I just really wanted to share from my experience with that as such a potent dive, and then some of my own reflections in this week. So that's all I wanted to share. Thank you.
Just as a quick note, I haven't probably read Robert Moore in 25, since my late 20s, early 30s. And that's the whole men's type of work I did back then is what inspired this group. So I just ordered that book and it's already arrived through Kindle. So I'm looking forward to it.
He's got a trio of books that, because he's known for King, Magician, Warrior, Lover. But honestly, that's a really good book, and it really ties into what this group is about and talks about. I've found so much value in his other 3 books. One is all about the magician archetype and the role of the kind of work we do. Another is the archetype of initiation, the role of initiation and ritual in our life. And what was this third one I got? Oh, Facing the Dragon. Right. Facing the Dragon. That one.
Do you know the title of the initiation one? Because that's my culture in the Pearl. So I'd be interested in that. Oh, he's got the book right there. What is it?
Archetype of Initiation.
Will you type that in the chat for me, Yama? Thank you. So yeah, that's been something I've been working on as well. The initiating this Delta, initiating the pool team, initiating this group, and not having to lead it, but be a part of holding the container. So thank you for that.
So I'd like to throw out another little metaphor that I think we may be able to apply to the dragon. I have a friend, her name's Joanna, and her life's purpose is to do coaching with horses. And just to have, you don't even have to ride the horse, but have the person be in presence of the horse. The horse's heart is about 4 times the size of our heart. And to be in that energy field of the heart as a method of transformation, and to take on that energy. But she says it's hard to find horses that haven't been slaves. And what she means by that is these methods of training, which are an authoritative over, not in relationship with the horse, but forcing the horse to respond, right? So that's hard to find. There's horse whisperers that that train a horse and move with the horse in relationship with the horse. But if a horse is trained as a slave, she can't use that horse in this type of coaching. So I'm wondering if that metaphor of the slave horse also applies to this metaphor of our dragon within us. These wounds that are within that dragon that we need to figure out how to get around, not get around, but how to work with, how to transform them. I'm just wondering if there's something that might be there.
I'm going to see if I can go there. The place that this conversation's been taking me for some time is not too easy to go. But I'll start with the dragon. I don't have the facility to share, but I have a picture of a blue-green dragon that my daughter painted me as a book cover for the book that was begun 11 years ago and has yet to be finished, called Waking the Blue-Green Dragon. And so that the book title did come to me. And so it's an image of a blue-green dragon that's holding the earth, and the other thing that came back to me when the dragon conversation came up was a very brief meditation that from Maureen Saint Germain, calling your dragons. And so there's a concept of the dragons as a fourth dimensional allies. So to me, I guess the image of the dragon has been more of an ally than a what would be the word? Than an opposition. But this sort of painful place that this conversation about home has taken me. There's some story around it, of course. Yesterday we initiated a dream arc delta, my second delta, where I landed in the 5th position to start. And so the question of selflessness, what that looks like, I am not the doer, sacrifice. I drew a sacred path card after our conversation last week, and I drew the Sundance, which is a gruesome image of men piercing their pectoral muscles to draw blood and tie themselves to the tree of life, sort of returning the blood of life. And the concept that I took in from the lesson of that was it's in respect for the pain that the woman goes through in childbirth. This is why the men do it. The women have already given, I gave at the office, kind of a thing. But to just go to the past the metaphorical talking around it levels, the real painful place is this dream that my wife and I have had of home and being stable and being at home and having been such nomads. Right on cue, she just walked through. I had to take a pause. So I think I'm going to take a pause there. I'm going to have to finish in a minute.
Thank you, David. I'm looking forward to the second part of your story. I was already pretty much engaged, and I felt the way you were kind of adjusting the tone, tuning in your own frequencies. And I could feel like there was something deep you wanted to share. And for some reason, I felt like harmony in your story. I relate a lot to the words, to Matthew's words concerning this, the pride, because I often, in the past, I used to fall in that trap of feeling too proud of myself or feeling grandiose or like big. And my ego was now like was kind of taking over. And the moment my ego took over, everything just started like crumbling down because I was actually getting away of who I was. And I have the 26th gene key on my life's work. And I noticed that when I keep this simplicity of my own being, where I don't even think what I am doing, I'm just being and expressing my true self from my heart. That's when the magic happens, because it's kind of this flow of expressing myself, which is like a series of moments, words, feelings, and actions that put it all together, they make something big. But if I start thinking of each and every one and every single part that I'm doing, then I kind of lose track of it because I get attached to my ego, or I cling to that. And whenever I feel like I'm identifying with my ego, I'm so glad I can now recognize that feeling. Before, it was really confusing to me. I didn't know what to do with that feeling. I didn't know how to behave or what action to take. And now I like suggested to Tom and by Matthew, by Chris, I kind of detach from these energies which are actually taking me back to my ego. And I start kind of breathing in and out and trying to be mindful again, not to be so materialistic with my own existence, but just to know that by being there and acting from my true heart, those little sequences and actions that I take will lead to the true results that I am meant to head to. And And I guess that's kind of a path that I have discovered, and that you guys triggered that in me right now, just to share this story, because I know that ego is there, I guess, just to, I mean, it's got a lot of benefits as well, and I would like to share that with you, or that you share that with me. What are the benefits of the ego? Because I have this question in me, like I really want to know what the ego is for, or how can I get to know it, and how can I have a healthy relationship with my own ego. And that would be something that we could discuss whenever we feel like doing it. I would be very, very open for that, and very happy to hear about that. Yeah, I'm complete, and I thank you.
Thanks, Sam. I think I needed to hear your voice before I could keep going. So just in this moment, I'm noticing something that's real for me, which is it's really hard for me to talk about this when my wife is in the room. And so, you know, and it's this sort of going into groups with men has been sometimes challenging for me, but also I appreciate that you're here. And it really goes back to this sort of wounding that we experienced together in our marriage, which is a long, committed marriage. But it's been struck with deep sort of agitations and, those kind of things. And so I guess maybe it all could be described in a really experience I had at the beginning of the Pearl. I went to Momo's Dance Waves, and I was dancing the 43rd gene key, which is my wife's radiance. We have programming part. We're in the same codon rings in our whole sequence. So I'm 34, she's 43. Anyway, the thing that just finally drew me to tears, which doesn't happen that often, was this. She had, Momo plays a playlist, and you just get to move, right? And it was that song that you guys have probably heard, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Our House. It's a very, very, very fine house. And I could still feel it, like the tears. And so part of me is trusting. Part of me is aware that the home, whether physical or metaphorical, is coming, is here. I mean, even the turtle, as my guardian, is telling me the home, you carry your home with you. But this yearning and this interaction, this emotional malaise that has occurred in my relationship over home and lack thereof has been pretty painful. In the last 3 years, we came back from being basically nomadic, living in isolation in Alaska, I'm actually sitting in the room where we used to stay all summer with my mother-in-law. We came back to Oregon hoping to land. We actually bought a home. The first year was a disaster. The aspects of the person who sold it to us were very deceptive, but it was also a home that was affordable, which was amazing. Then the pandemic hit and we sort of went into a panic and sold the home. It was like, just wash our hands of this. It was like, I won't go into the details of the painful aspects of it, but then we rented a home. Then that home was sold out from under us. And then we, in this sort of state of dishonor, you might say, have been, for the last year, have been living, after 3 years of having to move at this time of year every year, I've been living with my daughter. And so there's an aspect of deep pain there, and there's an aspect of actual healing, because being in the space of family, I feel like has been very beneficial in many ways. And even the reason we're here today is because Nicole's mom lives here, and she's old and needs help. We've been here to help her, and so on. But anyway, there's like this really raw place. That's all I can say. I don't know if I can describe it anymore in me, in the personal side. And I can maybe speak to that place of this question of the beneficial aspect of the ego, which came, I believe it was being spoken to this morning in a study group. That I was attending. And it has to do with it has to do with my contemplation on this masculine feminine. Like, I really felt a dear connection to Neo's sharing, but also that the pain around the question of surrendering to the divine feminine. The pain is in the separation. It is in the illusion of separation of this reason side and this feeling side. So it's, it can be taken personally, this oh my God, I'm a privileged white male, whatever, or talk about toxic masculinity as directed towards males. But to me, the toxicity of it is equally present in many and most females, in the sense that I'll speak for myself, but I feel it in humanity, has lost the trust of lost the trust of the listening to that still small voice. And that's the grief that I carry anyway, is the part of me that actually knows what it knows, but refuses to listen, refuses to follow through. And so I hope some of that made sense, because I think I've spoken enough, and I'll just share the rest of it in silence.
May I ask, David, is your wife's, you said your wife has the 43rd gene key, is that in her activation sequence?
Yeah, I'll give you the quick tour. Activation sequence. My life work 55, hers 49, Ring of the Whirlwind. My evolution 59, hers 4, ring of union. My radiance 34, 43, ring of destiny. My purpose 20, hers 23, ring of life and death.
Wow, yeah, you really do have those codon rings. I have to say, I find it fascinating that those of us who have spoken of and brought our wives into this, our wives all have, Jesse's, mine and yours, all have that combination of keys in their activation sequence. 49, 4, 43, and 23. I just read
Wow. I'll just share one more thing.
Nicole as well. That's also.
Yeah. When I had the dream last week, I said, I think I shared the sheep pooping. Like this was just the image. It was just a sheep in a field taking a poop. And I realized that that was the connected to simplicity.
Mm.
And I realized that this sort of migraine, depression, anxiety, panic energy that I've been sort of dealing with from my beloved, it's just for me to let it, watch it be pooped out and become compost. Like that's it, period. I just have to let it go. My attachment to it is, just me playing in the shit.
Mm. Yeah, and that was when you were sharing of your pain, just in this house experience, it's like I could so relate to just so much of what you shared. So I find it fascinating because that's what I, watched her going through. My wife has migraines. My wife has anxiety, but she's come through it. And yeah, it's just so interesting. It's fascinating to me, the patterns. Yeah, thank you. That's really cool about the activation sequence in your codon rings. I haven't seen that yet in too many partnerships. Did you want to share, Robert?
Yeah, I'll share. I may need an extra time, but maybe not. We'll see. Yeah, last time after we talked about the anger and fiery dragons and how it triggered me, yeah, it triggered such a strong release of energy that I couldn't sleep probably until 2 o'clock in the morning, and yeah, lots of warmth and heat going through my body. And also, I probably said before that I work in a hostel, and so we had this guest over here, female guest, and without saying anything, we were triggering in each other, the core wound, lots of fear, anger, guilt, and those feelings were strong. And yeah, I was doing always my best, giving lots of space to those feelings, mainly when I was around her. And she felt the same thing, but in a way, I don't know what was her story. She probably didn't want to feel those feelings or work with it. And it ended up being so bad for her that when she would see me, if she came close to me 5 meters away, she had to run away from me, from the room and stuff like that. And I was like, shit, this is not good. 2 days later, my boss says to me, she comes to me and says, Robert, you know, this woman Tamara, she just made sexual like allegations against you. And I was like, fuck. And so I talked to my boss and I explained to her that those allegations are false, and to talk to one more male guest who was here, and he actually saw parts of what happened, and he told her that it is all like bullshit. And then this woman also physically like abused one other woman, and also this guy who saw what happened like between me and her. Yeah, she ended up like verbally abusing him, and yes, it was a painful story, but I felt that it has like a lot to do with my core wound, and that's like universe is like turning up the fucking heat for me to like figure out my fucking core wound that is like deeply related like yeah to it somehow. And I have the core wound number 5 connected with guilt. And yeah, so next day, fortunately, I made a reservation to go to a mountain hut and up in the mountains. And so I went hiking and contemplating, like, yeah, I was like triggered still, you know, from those allegations, like motherfucker. And yeah, going back in my past, like, where is this coming from? Where is like this guilt connected? And it actually took me back to my childbirth, that I was like born prematurely 1 month, and in a way subconsciously I have had and still have. It's not completely processed yet and integrated, but I have this like attitude towards women. It's like, you fucking owe me something, you fucking owe me something. And it's like this rage is like in a way deeply embedded, and I've been like releasing it a lot recently. And yeah, it's about this rage, is about how it's like I was supposed to stay in this fucking 1 more month in this room, in this beautiful space, and I fucking had to leave. And it's like, and all those fucking women that I like, they owe me fucking something, because it's like, you know, subconsciously trying to like recover this feeling that I was like supposed to have, and it was like cut off short, that my mother fell down to the floor and I was like born prematurely, and then I ended up in the incubator. And yes, and then I would be like projecting this anger and guilt onto another women, and also fear that they're not gonna give me what they owe to me in my world. And yeah, and when I was like hiking, and when I was like getting those insights, I would always like hear ravens like shouting in the sky, or like flying extremely fast by me. And I was like, that's really interesting. And also saw a big frog jumping in front of me, and it was on a mountainside, not very close to water, in an unusual place. And then I ended up meditating by a lake, and my goal in a way was to stay by the lake and just relax. But there were like lots of cows, and they were like bothering me, and they would not leave me alone. I couldn't chase them away. They kept coming back. I just really couldn't relax. They tried to chew on my backpack and my jackets and my jacket. And I was like, fuck, you know, I'm gay. That's probably a message. I'm not supposed to be here. Fuck it, I'm leaving. And then I left and I went to a low lake. There are like 2 lakes. One is higher and one is lower. So I went to the lake on the bottom. And usually in the past, like when I would have an interaction with women, most of the time, in a way, they had like a negative protective reaction when I was like around them, that they would try to, in a way, like protect themselves or turn around and stuff like that. And so I was like sitting by this lake naked, and those two women show up, and one of them like takes off her top, and instead of like, you know, the usual thing, trying to protect herself and like face myself with her back towards me, she was like turned towards me, and she was like, you know, like proudly showing off her boobs. And I was like, shit, maybe something really shifted today. And so I was like, this is not an accident. That's a like positive sign. And then I come back to the hostel, and the next day, this lady who made the allegations, she finally left, and we were all relieved. And I also noticed that my my energy field definitely shifted big time towards women, you know, like the female guests in this hostel, that I don't withdraw my energy when I see them. And yeah, so I mean, it was a painful period, but it also forced me to integrate lots of my triggers connected with women. Yeah, that's all I have. Thank you.
I just have to say, Robert, you always bring in such a relevant vibe. I know you're sharing from your heart, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Phil, you spoke deep into that fifth line wound there, and the parts of us that, yeah, it's challenging at times to honor. So thank you.
Yeah, for me, it's like also this contemplation of the 59 and the 29 and the sexual tensions. I guess it's in the 6 too. I don't know. Maybe it's everywhere. But there's a sense I can feel sometimes. It depends on, of course, our relative state of stability with my wife and I. But there's sometimes when I'll just walk into the room and I'll know, better breathe deeply now. And interestingly, I sort of, part of me has thought, I wonder if in a men's group there will be more ease around this conversation of sexuality. And in one sense, yes. In another sense, it's like there's this hidden aspect. There's a secret space that we each hold around. It's like what Michael, or a friend of mine who runs men's groups, a master of men's groups, I should say, that I've participated in a couple of his when he was online. He used the metaphor about, he was asking me about the way some other men's groups I was in run. He was saying it was kind of like having sex, like you don't hear about it from other guys. You don't talk about it. And where am I going with that? I guess it's that with all of us being infinite beings of light, some of us happen to have been incarnated now as man, some of us as women. But this sort of feminine aspect wants to be safe, wants to be cared for. And the masculine aspect wants to be free, wants to be, spread the seed, so to speak. Anyway, I think that's all I was going for. I'm complete.
A couple other things on this peace through thought. Had a memorial I attended on Saturday, and it's just this whole group of cousins that kind of triggered that. I can't remember names. I'm having a hard time remembering who all these cousins were that I haven't seen for years, and tripping over my own tongue. But I met my cousin Darlene, who she's my second cousin. But when I was 8 and 9, living in Spokane, she was part of the group of cousins that we all played with. And at that time, we were having potlucks every weekend. We'd have a family potluck, and like 40 people would come, which was just a part of the family. So it was different groups of people each weekend, but every weekend there was a potluck family. Powerful time in my life. But what I realized this week, getting back to that peace through thought, was that in her is a large part of the archetype of the woman I am attracted to, and could take it back to that age of 8, saying this is what attracts me in a woman. Right, that just her now, I could kind of tap back into that. And then another thing I was reading was how, if a goose comes out of the egg and a human is there, the goose will imprint with the human and believe the human is their mother and follow that. Right? Well, this is the same thing, but it happens in humans from within the womb in the first year of birth. Whatever is happening in the environment of the parents or of the caregivers tends to come into our bodies, and then from that spot we try to cure that in the way we behave. So one thing, Robert, you might want to look into is what was happening in your parents during that period. And I know, like for me, my mom had just come off of a miscarriage. There's this feeling of she wanted a girl, and there's this grief for the girl that she lost. And then at 6 months, my wife's brother was murdered. And I can feel all of those and feel that into this peace through thought, because those affect this peace through thought. They taint might not be the right word. A better word, they might bend the arc of my thinking slightly. And can I unbend that, or do I even want to unbend that? Do I want to not be attracted to the women that I'm attracted to? Do I want to change that or expand it or make it wider? Or do I want to include redheads into but it's that piece through thought that I was still tapping into to say, how does that affect our thinking as we go day to day? Yeah. Now I'm complete.
Next.
Can I follow that? I wanted to just two things. Just two things. There was expressed something that's sort of come into the collective about manifestation. Feel it, envision it, picture it, and then it, comes to you, kind of an idea. And this place, where is the place of thought? Where is the place of ego? And there's what contemplation came to me around the heart as a neurological system. It's been discovered that they used to think it was mostly a muscle, but it's 60-70% brain, basically, heart brain. And so that when pain or pleasure is registered in the sensory system, it's felt, but then it shoots up to this other brain where the thought system labels it for future reference. In other words, maybe that's the left, what we would call the left brain. So then it becomes a pattern of the way that we use our thought. And I have this image of the ravens, Odin's ravens, thought and memory, and how he used them as messengers. And so the place of free choice is sort of important because it's the way, it's the mental discipline that allows the sort of release of the heart. Maybe that's the male bowing to the female within us, or the reason bowing to the feminine in some sense. Now I said two things. That was one. The second one was your image of the birds. I thought of that because I got an email from a friend last week, and it was an image of thousands and thousands of birds, dead birds, on the islands in the Netherlands. And it was a long thing about, magnetic fields and 4G towers and whatnot, and what might have caused it, because it had been attributed to the bird flu. But that, to me, just in my heart, that really associates with this sort of guilt of being human right now at a time when nature is being so affected by us. There's so much loss. And so I don't know if that relates to you, but to me, I could feel the loss of those birds in me, like, as that rage, I guess it is. It's a grief and it's a rage. So that's two things. I'm done.
Feel there's something with this piece, at least alive for me, in what Robert sort of brought to the group, and then David you were expanding on, and then I think David, you said, I'm not sure if this is to do with the 6, and I feel it is. So I feel the 6 and the 59, which actually forms a channel in human design, and it's about relationships and relating. And I'm a line 5 core wound, like Robert, and also what you spoke to, David, too, about being in men's group and women's groups, and the freedom to express ourselves in this space where we may not, like David, you had your wife walking in earlier. I had my wife walking in earlier too. It must be that activation sequence again. She was walking in while I was talking. But I felt safe enough to share what I was sharing in that space with her. And because I spend a lot of time in women's groups, and I really appreciate the men's group. And one of the things that women say again and again in the groups, because I have a lot of women who come to groups that I host, is that they feel safe with me there. And then in this space, that freedom to share these aspects of ourselves, and some of them, like, there's that freedom to share some of these darker aspects of being man, and that maybe a woman wouldn't feel so safe with me. Do you know what I mean? But at the same time, allowing, it's having that freedom of that expression, but also as if the women were in the room, and so that we're acknowledging that feminine. Like the 5th line, Richard says that a big part of the 5th line in that core, he talks about, I think, in the Pearl sequence, doesn't he? Where it's like, if you've got a 5th line as a man in this world, then a big part of it is healing your relationship with women and the feminine, and harnessing deep respect for the feminine. And that's always really sat with me, because there's parts of me where I know that I don't respect. And to acknowledge those parts of me in a space like this, in a group like this, to be able to, that whole idea of the shame that is shared is halved in the presence of the compassionate witnesses. And there's aspects of myself as the man where I'm like, oh man, so I feel like groups like this can take me to that next level in my interactions with women through the being honest with self, but also not continuing in some of the unconscious behaviors. Like, it's exposing those unconscious behaviors, but it's allowing me to meet them so that I can actually transmute them. And I feel like there's so much in that realm of sexuality, that 59th gene key, the dragon in the genome. We're back to the dragon, or at least I'm back to the dragon. Yeah, that 59th gene key. And one of the things about Neo, like anybody who's been in conversation with Neo, he will talk freely and openly about sexuality in such a way that I've not met in other men. And he'd had me doing a visualization once where I was connecting with what he was calling my inner pussy, right? Where it's just like really getting intimate with that aspect of self and really recognizing that there is no separation. And in that, like, being so that there is a freedom in it, but there's also an honoring in it. And Neo really and I felt Neo bringing what he brought to the table last week was, I feel, because he's explored this dynamic so much in his life. And to be in a men's group and to honor that part of ourselves, the sexuality part of ourselves, that is so often, left for the darker areas of our life, or in the secrecy and the quiet, that kind of thing. To kind of, like, to me, it feels like that 6 and the 59, those two together. Like, if we're to have true peace, then there is that connection with the 59, and this, like, to me, the men's groups, to be able to heal it, because I've been turned off by a lot of men's groups because they actually become spaces where guys can continue the conversation of the, angst towards the feminine or towards women. And I don't feel like we hold that space at all here, which is why, I'm drawn to it. And so everything I'm sharing now is not from any sense of completion. It's just from a sense of appreciating the exploration, really appreciating what Robert brought, like what you brought up, and sharing that, to be able to share that you felt like women owed you. It's like, that's been in the quiet of my mind. It's been, that's played out in my consciousness. But to be able to have that space, to be able to honor it, and then in the same time to discontinue it in such a way that you had that transformational experience in your life, overnight, by the sounds of it. And yeah, so I'm not sure exactly where I'm going with this, but just honoring, I feel like that something is opening up there when we, to explore that part of it, because especially when sexuality seems to be the thing that keeps us divided, right? And I'm talking like on the physical plane and the emotional plane. There's the union of the masculine and the feminine in a higher astral plane, or even in the mental plane. But when we talk this, I feel like we're talking the deep roots of that physical. I mean, we still see, because I see men who are, there's one man in a community that I know who has women around him, and he gives off this aura of like being an awakened human. But I know that he's raping people. And I have spoken out against this, and I've spoken to this. I've spoken to people about this. And even some of the females will just say, push it away. They'll push that away. And so it continues to be, even in those spaces that claim to be moving forward with this, it continues to be some, it's like, because we can actually, if we have, we can actually manipulate the shadow to our advantage. There's that hidden, that pride, that 2016 key, the hidden, it's like, if you know enough about the shadow, you can work it in a way in your favor. And that's what this guy is doing quite well in this community. And, as well, talking about this embracing the dragon within myself, and we're seeing how there's so many spiritual teachers, male spiritual teachers, that are meeting accusation upon accusation, some of it true, a lot of it true, I think, of sexual misconduct. It's like, it feels like there's still something so much, still feels like there's so much to explore within this. Because I know a lot of women don't believe that there can be a male leader, spiritual leader, that would even, Richard, at least, and if you've seen the Dream Arc video, he confesses to the affair that he had, but he doesn't hold any shame around it because it was long ago and it was something that he's worked through and worked with. And I'm sure it's to his and everybody else's advantage in that respect. Yeah, so I want to bring it to a close there, but I just feel it's something more that wants to, it feels like such a potent, maybe that's why I felt so much when David at the beginning, you did an attunement, and I just felt so much around my second chakra and that area of the body that is so, and I come from the Catholic tradition where sexuality is just, that's clouded in guilt and shame, right? That's, you don't even go there. And it's shifted a lot in my life. And at the same time, to be able to be in these spaces where, talk of the masculine and feminine does bring up these divisions. And there is the male and female of the physical, right? Because, and actually, again, Robert Moore speaks to this about how there's this, no, that's a tangent, never mind. Yeah, anyway, I think I'm rambling now, but I just feel we can open up something so deep with this exploration together that is actually going to be uncomfortable, and uncomfortable even to talk about it, and we might have disagreements with each other in ways, but it's also so illuminating to what I continue to see in the communities around me as a challenge, that amongst the seemingly woke people and the men in my life, like I've got another friend who's friends with this other guy, and he's been friends with him for years, and was completely blindsided when he discovered there was these rape accusations against one of his best friends. So that there's this, that we can be, so that women can feel truly safe in the communities, but also so that men can be expressing and exploring, so that we can explore these aspects of ourselves that have been challenging to talk about in some spaces. I really am done now.
I am very pleased. Not that you had that situation. I'm so sorry that that happened to you, Robert. And it was amazing that that worked out the way that it did. But I was thinking actually a couple weeks ago, it's like we stick our little toe in sexuality a little bit because there are some diverse sexualities in the group, but we never talk really about anything sexual and that big divide. And, and there's so much shit down that rabbit hole for much of us, you know. So it's nice to see that we're broaching that, and we're kind of coming to the end here. So that is something. Hopefully, some of the other guys watch the video. We miss you. Apologize about the shift if it didn't work out for everybody, but we'll be back in 2 weeks. But yeah, this is, it's definitely a topic in the spiritual realms that is avoided. We're not talked about, and it's the core of that drives a lot of stuff. So I'm glad that it's surfacing.
Thank you.
I'm glad you brought in the second chakra. I hadn't noticed that my second chakra was, there was energy in there.
I'm looking forward to our next sessions, guys.
Yeah.
This is some good material, and I guess we're given the opportunity to discuss this amongst us with the harvest and the maturity that we have gathered together. And I know that this will be a lot of support for all the people around us as well. But because I think this topic touches on the deepest part of the wound, of that sacred wound we are born with. I really feel that. So I'm looking forward to these topics. And you mentioned Neo. Neo has a lot to do, has a lot to speak about this, and I know that he will be of great support as well, and with all his experience with all his artwork that he's leading as well. I know that that is a huge benefit and privilege to have his presence as well, and all the rest of us, obviously. We're kind of making a really good team to discuss about these things that I really have never, now that we're talking about it, I have never experienced something like that, that we can bring so much healing to these topics as the group that we are. So beautiful closing of this session. Thank you, guys, and I love you.
Thank you.
Should we just breathe it out in silence for a minute?
Yeah.
Hands on the belly. Spiritual kings, warriors, magicians, and lovers.